Um, Hello everyone. I hope you're having a good time here in Davos. As you may know, the talk that I'm gonna give today is called Drupal and Android through REST, a quick integration. I say quick, but actually I'm a Drupal developer, so it took me a while to understand how Android works. I would like to know how many of you have coded in Android or Java or have some experience on it. Okay, awesome. We're gonna explain a bit more then. My name is John Gustavo Choque Condori. It's a bit long, I know, but you can just call me John. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to raise your hand and say whatever you want. I'm a Drupal developer at MD Systems and the CTO at Having.net. You can find me wherever you want as YONGT9412 in any platform, so feel free to ask any question. First, to start, we're gonna give a small introduction about how this idea came to mind, like how this talk, this went or came to Davos today. Some existing approaches on how people have been doing this in the different Drupal versions, how to configure the Drupal side, how to do the Android side, then do some small details, explain a bit about how we can improve this or what problems usually arise when trying to do this implementation, and then kind of long demo to explain how this was done. So where does this come from? There is some short background I would like to explain. That's the logo of Having.net, a small startup for making or helping children to develop self-confidence and self-efficacy. And the problem with that is we are really a small startup, and we needed a platform that was able to work mobile and also on desktop. And we didn't really know what platforms to use, what tools to use, right? And we were getting out of money. We were getting like more people to know our platform. So it was a really quick decision that we had to take. And we had experimenting with some other tools. We tried Firebase with Android. That's the more common implementation. But it wasn't desktop. We needed to do some extra work for doing desktop version, so it wasn't ideal. We did Firebase with React, but it was also lacking on the Android version. We could create a progressive app. I don't know if you know what a progressive app is. Someone knows? Okay. We're trying to use Parse server. That's an open source server created by Facebook initially with Django and implemented with Android, but it was still double of work. After analyzing a bit and then trying to get with the easiest, quickest solution, we decided to go with Drupal with Android. So we could just create a website that could work with the same things in both versions and have an Android mobile app that was just a client. And we were starting to look for different options, what was already implemented or what was going on in GitHub or everywhere, right? So we found that project called Drupal Fit. That's in GitHub, you can check the link if you want. That it was the first implementation of integrating these two platforms. But it was kind of hard to do it because first it was in Drupal 7, and as you may know, the difference between REST in both versions are big. It didn't have a flexible API. You couldn't define many things. You couldn't change what information you were getting back from the calls. It didn't have updates for quite a while, so that was also a no-go. But it had tests, which is important, I believe, and it was like a good point. But then, when looking for some other options, we also saw the Drupal 8 implementation. It's already one Android app that works for Drupal 8, but it didn't have Retrofit. It's an easier way to consume different endpoints that you get from any other platform. It didn't have a flexible API either. It didn't have updates for quite a while either because it was just a one-time project, I believe. And it didn't have tests, so we didn't really know what to do. We were like, finding a lot of different implementations, attempts that were not really working, and we didn't have a good documentation in the Android side, so it was kind of hard to define what was going to come next. So it was like really hard to know what to do and we didn't really had enough money to hire more people into the team. So one of the team members had to learn how to do this, and we came up with a solution to do it ourselves. So like going straight to implementation in the Drupal side configuration is really easy. It's the easiest thing that you can do. You just need a contrib module if you want to be more exquisite, like to do more things. But in general, you just need those modules. You just enable them. Like RESTful is enough, and then some other dependencies. And REST UI, we decided to go for REST UI because we also needed some other endpoints at that point. So it was really helpful to find that module. And of course, like talking about some of those modules, like we had this HTTP, basic authentication. That's basically just like sending the credentials in a hash as a header to allow the users to do this kind of REST calls. So besides that, to configure it in the Drupal side, at least just for getting the login and the content working, we just had to enable get and post those methods in Node at the content level and the user level. And we also have to do it like accept any format, in this case JSON, and just enable the basic authentication. It's the same here, in both the same, and it was really easy, straightforward. You know, as a Drupal developer, this part was the easiest, right? You just see all the documentation, you know where the things are, but when you go to the Android side, things start to change. Because first, when you want to do this implementation with Retrofit, or to do it in a more schema-ish way that we have in Drupal, you have to use these POGOs or POGOs that are plain objects of Java that are basically just normal classes, but they are not. They are basically just having getters and setters. So if you can, like, you can replicate actually all your schema or your how your entities are stored in the same POGO way, so it's gonna be easy to after that access to any information that you have in Drupal. Then we also found Retrofit, that is type-safe HTTP client for Android and Java. That's basically one of the most successful implementations of this. It has more than 31,000 stars in GitHub. It requires a minimum Android 2.3 that's already not used, and the latest version was quite new. It was just updated a few days ago, so it was a really good option for us to use it. Then we started to think a bit more Android, and we started to think about shared preferences. That's the way. There are a lot of ways to store sessions in Android. You can store it with SQLite. You can use Firebase just for the sessions, or you can save all this stuff in the SD card. But shared preferences do not need those access, and it's just inside the Android app that is way easier to maintain. So it's really easy. You just put a string that has a key value, and then you commit those changes, and it's in the memory of the application, in the cache, in the data of the application. And there were also some other things. There are differences between activities and fragments. That's an Android concept, and it's really good to understand this because most of the time, and I've seen this in many places, when you want to do a login, many apps just use a new fragment. What's a fragment? A fragment is a piece of code, a piece of UI that you put inside an activity. Okay, so when you want to do a login, and you want to make it work in a proper way, you should create a new activity where you're going to put all the content that the user is going to access to. It shouldn't be in the same activity with different fragments. It should be in different activities, each one with their own fragments. I'm going to explain a bit more about that in the demo. To do this, at least for the demo part and how we started with the Android part, we did it plain and simple. We just had a really simple login. In this case, it's going to be just 2 buttons. They're going to have a way to insert, to get the nodes. You're going to have an activity detail node, and then a way to insert those nodes in the Drupal from Android. So let's go to a demo, straight to a demo. I want to be quick. quick with this, so let's go. Um, I don't know if you can see, everyone can see? Okay, awesome. So I would like to start with a thing that, as you can see, we don't need to do anything in the Drupal part. It's already configured, so we just need to focus on this. So first of all, you need to add these libraries into any Android application. Let's just create a blank application, and then you're gonna have like the need of add this retrofit, a JSON converter that is basically a way to convert JSON data to Java objects. So it's really useful, and you really need to use it to make this implementation work. And then some login interceptor I'm trying to use just for the sake of the demo. But basically that should be almost everything in terms of libraries. So when we go to the Pojos and like trying to do the login into Drupal, it should be really easy to, because you just need to create one that has like login data. You have your name and password with same names as they are in the Drupal fields. That's really important. And then a constructor that must be everything for the login. You can also do, let me see. So, as you can see, we have like the node Pojo here that has a title, a type, that they are inside an array list. That's an array in terms of PHP. And then you're setting it as a normal thing, but instead of using just a normal string and everything, we are using another Pojo because like the title itself can have two different things inside the JSON file, right? So you can have a value, that's the title itself, and you can have a language. So once you have it, to access to that value itself within the JSON, when you do this post request or get request, you have to say, like, use this annotation that's JSON, the JSON part of the library that serialize the name and let the program know that we have to go to access to this key. So it happens the same with the type of the node, and then we just have a target ID that is the one, like a reference field that we have everywhere, right? So in the retrofit part, that's the way to access to consume the endpoints that we're gonna enable in the Android side. We just need to do really, like, it's the easiest way to do this. To just call to define a get, either post or get call to the path that you want to access to, and then like any header you want. And in this case, for the body, you can just send the credentials in the JSON file, in the JSON data, as a login data. That's also the Pojo that we just discussed about. And then we're gonna get a response body that's a retrofit thing that you can just, like, it's type safe, right? So you always know, you always can manage whatever comes back from the call. So this is for the login. These two are for the creating. This for getting one node based on the node ID. You have to, like, for doing the REST calls, you have to add the authorization because it's a basic authorization header. So that's gonna be also sent when calling to this method. You have the node ID. That's the only thing needed. And when creating a node, you need this authorization hash again, and you also need a cross the CSRF token that you also get when you log in, and also a node, and that must be it. Those are the three things that are in this demo app. So it feels really easy now, right? But to figure out how this works with all the different versions of Drupal and these outdated libraries was just complicated to at that time. But then, when you want to create your retrofit instance that's for calling to these methods, you're gonna need an interceptor that's and like to read the HTTP calls, and and then just build the client as it is. So it's really easy. You can also add a converter factory. That's the JSON one for making all the returned data to be Java objects. So it's also straightforward. So one thing that's really important too is the shared preferences. So if you want to start your session, it can go against GDPR to store the name and the password within the Android app because it's going to be in the cache, and everyone can access to those shared preferences if they have the same ID, the app ID. So if they have this one, the same one, then it can be accessed by everyone. Maybe that's a Google problem because it's an implementation that you don't require a permission in the Android system for that, but somehow that's how it is. So instead of storing these two, of course I save the CSRF token, but I try to save it. I try to save the basic authorization already hashed. So the user, it's just accessing by variables, and we will never see what the credentials are of the user. So it's just there are like small methods just to construct these objects, and then the funny part comes into the login. So the login activity, that's the one they're gonna just receive the data from the user, should first check if it's already logged in. You can also just save if the basic authorization and you received a correct call from Drupal. It should tell, this code gonna just take you back, or gonna take you straight to the main activity instead of making it go through the login. So that's a one-time thing, or every time the user is already logged in, it will just work and won't need to log in again. Then more instantiations, and to call and to make this work with Drupal, we need to do some, all this code gonna be in GitHub, so I'm just trying to explain a bit more how this implementation is made. You get the JSON object that you got in your response as a body, as a string, and then you can check if the token is there, and if it is, you can just store it, and then you can get the user ID if it's logged or not, because you're gonna get like it's successful or not, and then you're gonna start to you obviously need to use base 64 for hashing the credentials, so you use that. And then just move to the next activity, to the next screen that the user is gonna see. Then, in the main activity, you also need to check if there is already a user that's logged in, and if it's not, it should take you back to the login activity because it's the easiest implementation. And then just these are things for the demo itself. When we want to get a node, we are using the same things as just getting the title that's in the Poja file, right? So if we want to do that, we have to call to the API service, to the endpoints that we just defined in other files. We need to show to access to those and send this basic authorization. But it's already stored in a shared preference manager. So you just use it, and it should just work out of the box. When you want to insert a node, it's a bit more tricky. At first, we didn't know. The Drupal messages that you get when you try this with Postman are a bit not that clear. But you're basically just sending the same information, but also the token that you get for each session. So that's the basic implementation. I can show you right now how it works. So this is the Android app. Let me see. Okay, so this is the Android app. If we just add any credential and we try to sign in, it's not here, but in the Logout, it will tell you that it's not, sorry, unrecognized username of password. That's what Android gives you, what Drupal gives you back. But if you, for example, try with another one, at least in this case, I'm trying to be more using the log function, a valid credential for a user that is registered in the Android app. It would just take you there. But once that happens, you can see that here it has been passed, like the credentials, and then like because of the logger that I'm using, it will show you all the information that's getting back, and then you're gonna have the JSON data as a string that has all the information of the user, and also the token of this session, so you can insert and do any operation within the Drupal site. You also have this logout token. That's really important because you can just use it once and it's per session. So sometimes even Postman fails because this logout token is just one thing. It just happens once. And when you log in for the first time successfully in Postman, and you try to do it again and you didn't have this logout token, you just need to reset everything in that try. So after that happens, you can either add a node. In this case, I'm just trying to be really simple. So we can say mountain camp, and we have in this case page. That's gonna be the type of the node, and we are getting also this a Pantheon side because it's easier to test. Like there are no nodes here, so if I just run like add node, that means that it's adding the node. So I have it here. It doesn't have I didn't add much, at least for the demo part, information to the body or anything because it just uses the same PowerShell files, and that should also work simple. So if we want to get this node, we just see the ID that in this case is 12. So we just get one, and then it's just getting the title, that's mountain camp, as we just added. And as you can see, it takes a while, like a second, to get to the node, because the calls that Retrofit does are asynchronous. So that's also an implementation that's out of the box. You don't need to worry about making it easier or anything. Let me just go back here. So there is more details that you need to consider. As I was saying, this base 64 thing is a problem between Java versions on Android, so you cannot do it before 4.0, or you need to use a different API for that, so that's a problem. RESTful itself, oh no. Okay, no. There are useful links that you can look at. It's important to read the documentation, obviously, in Drupal core. You can use REST UI, that's really helpful. This link especially is for defining how important it is to use a mobile version of your app, or you want to use a responsive one. And this code that we have right now gonna be published in this Dropit Droid link, so feel free to clone it or do contribution as we are used to. I would like to thank MD Systems for all the support. It has been amazing, and thank you. I don't know if you have questions. I try to be quicker. You have any question? Anything? Nothing. Okay, guess we are done then. Thank you so much.